Commander Vex stared at the sparking control panel and wondered, not for the first time, why he had ever left his comfortable desk job in the Coalition's accounting department. The flagship Harmony's End groaned around him like an elderly relative getting out of bed, which was probably an apt comparison considering the ship was held together by prayer, duct tape, and what the engineering team generously called creative problem-solving. "Sir," called out Navigation Officer Krill from across the bridge, his voice carrying that special tone reserved for delivering terrible news, "the hyperdrive is making that sound again." "Which sound?" Vex asked, though he already knew the answer. There were 3 distinct sounds the hyperdrive made: the gentle hum that meant everything was fine, the angry buzzing that meant they'd be late for dinner, and the soul-crushing death rattle that meant they'd be lucky to make it to the next solar system. "The death rattle, sir." Of course it was. The bridge lights flickered ominously, as if the ship's electrical system wanted to emphasize the point. Vex rubbed his temples with all 4 of his hands, a gesture that would have looked impressive to humans but merely indicated moderate stress to his own species. The Korthak had evolved 4 arms specifically for situations like this, though evolution had apparently not anticipated space pirate attacks or aging military hardware. "Damage report," he sighed. "Well, sir," began Chief Engineer Blord, consulting his tablet with the enthusiasm of someone reading their own obituary. "The good news is that life support is still functioning. The bad news is that everything else is either broken, breaking, or held together by what I can only describe as wishful thinking." "Define everything else." "Weapons are offline, shields are operating at 12%. The navigation computer thinks we're a kitchen appliance. Communications are working, but only on channels that play elevator music. And sir," Blord paused dramatically, "the coffee machine is completely destroyed." A collective gasp echoed across the bridge. Vex felt his secondary heart skip a beat. They could handle broken weapons, failing shields, even a confused navigation computer, but a broken coffee machine. That was practically a war crime. "How long until we reach Coalition space?" Vex asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. "At current speed, assuming nothing else breaks down, approximately 6 months, sir. And realistically, we'll be lucky if we make it to next Tuesday." Vex considered their options. They could try to limp home and probably die in the cold vacuum of space, or they could swallow their pride and call for help. The problem was, the nearest Coalition repair facility was 3 sectors away, and their emergency beacon had been fried in the pirate attack along with their dignity. That left only one option. The option that every Coalition commander hoped they'd never have to consider. The option that had been quietly added to emergency protocols after the infamous Proxima incident, and the even more infamous what the humans call a minor modification incident. "Sir," Krill looked at him expectantly. "Orders." Vex took a deep breath, or the 4-lunged equivalent. "Open a channel to Sol 3. The bridge fell silent, except for the dying wheeze of the life support system. Even the sparking control panel seemed to pause in respect for what was about to happen. "Sir," Blord whispered, "are you sure you know what happened to the Diplomatic Fury?" "The Diplomatic Fury asked for weapon upgrades," Vex replied. "We're only asking for repairs." "Sir, with respect, humans don't really distinguish between those 2 things." Vex knew this was true. Earth had gained a reputation throughout the galaxy as the place you went when you wanted something fixed, improved, or accidentally turned into a planet-killing dreadnought. But they were also the only species crazy enough to actually help other species, usually for free, which was either admirably altruistic or deeply suspicious depending on your perspective. "Signal Earth," Vex commanded. "Tell them we need emergency repairs. Simple repairs, nothing fancy, just enough to get us home." "Should I mention that we're desperate?" asked Communications Officer Trill. "Never let humans know you're desperate," Vex replied. "That's when they start getting creative." The communication array crackled to life, though whether it was working properly, or just expressing its own disapproval, was anyone's guess. Vex composed himself, straightened his uniform, and prepared to make the call that would either save his crew or doom them all to whatever humans considered helpful. In the cold depths of space, the Harmony's End drifted toward an uncertain future, its coffee machine broken, its crew caffeinated only by memories, and its commander about to learn why the rest of the galaxy had a saying, "Be careful what you ask humans for. You just might get it." The response from Earth came faster than Vex had expected, which should have been his first warning sign. In his experience, anything involving humans that happened quickly usually ended in explosions, property damage, or both. "Coalition vessel Harmony's End. This is Engineer Jake Murphy of the Terran Emergency Response Team. We've received your repair request, and frankly, we're horrified." Vex blinked all 6 of his eyes in confusion. "Horrified. Your ship's structural integrity readings are offensive to basic engineering principles. Your power distribution system appears to have been designed by someone who learned physics from a cereal box. And don't even get me started on your coffee machine specs. We're dispatching a team immediately. We only need basic repairs. Vex said quickly. Nothing fancy. Just enough to get us home. There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by what sounded suspiciously like human laughter. Yeah, about that. We don't really do basic. Consider this a professional courtesy. Murphy out. The line went dead, leaving Vex staring at the communication panel with growing dread. He'd just made first contact with a human engineer who considered their ship's condition offensive and had laughed at the concept of basic repairs. This was exactly how horror stories started. Sir, Krill announced, sensors are detecting an approaching vessel. It's big, sir. Really big. The view screen flickered to life, revealing what could only be described as a flying warehouse with engines. The human ship was less elegant spacecraft and more industrial accident that had somehow achieved flight. It bristled with equipment pods, cargo bays, and what appeared to be several smaller ships bolted to its hull like mechanical barnacles. Incoming transmission, Trill reported. Harmony's end, this is the probably won't explode. Requesting permission to dock. We've got your repair team and about 17 tons of equipment, plus coffee. Vex's crew perked up at the mention of coffee. Even Chief Engineer Blorg looked hopeful for the first time since the pirate attack. Permission granted, Vex replied, wondering if it was too late to reconsider. 20 minutes later, the airlock cycled open and humanity made its entrance. Jake Murphy bounded aboard with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just discovered a new toy, followed by 2 other humans carrying enough equipment to build a small space station. Murphy himself was exactly what Vex had expected from human engineers, tall, energetic and wearing coveralls that had seen better decades. His hair stood up in directions that defied several laws of physics, and his eyes had the manic gleam of someone who considered impossible a personal challenge. Commander Vex, I presume, Murphy said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. Jake Murphy, and these are my colleagues, Stella Martinez and Tomas Rivera. Stella Martinez looked like she could bench press the ship's engine while discussing quantum mechanics. Her toolkit contained items that Vex suspected were either highly advanced repair equipment or weapons of mass destruction, possibly both. She nodded politely while eyeing the ship's bulkheads with professional interest. Tomas Rivera, on the other hand, was already unpacking what appeared to be a portable coffee laboratory. He moved with the focused intensity of someone conducting a religious ritual, which, Vex realized, might actually be accurate. Right then, Murphy announced, clapping his hands together, let's see what we're working with. Fair warning though, we might get a bit carried away. Stella here has strong opinions about inadequate defensive systems, and Tomas takes coffee infrastructure very seriously. We only need basic repairs, Vex emphasized again, though he was beginning to suspect this was like asking a hurricane to be less windy. Yeah, we heard you the first time. Murphy grinned. Don't worry, we'll have you fixed up in no time. Stella, what do you think of their weapons array? Stella had been examining a wall panel and looked up with the expression of someone who'd just discovered a crime against engineering. This isn't a weapons array, it's a suggestion of a weapons array. These power couplings couldn't handle a particularly aggressive flashlight. And the coffee situation? Murphy asked. Tomas looked up from his equipment with the solemn expression of someone delivering tragic news. The coffee machine isn't just broken, it's an insult to coffee machines everywhere. This is going to require complete reconstruction from the ground up. Excellent, Murphy rubbed his hands together. We've got our work cut out for us. Commander, if you could show us to your engineering section, we'll get started. Oh, and you might want to evacuate any non-essential personnel. We tend to work with a lot of sparks. As the human team began moving deeper into the ship, Vex caught Blorg's arm. What have we done? I don't know, sir. Blorg replied, watching Stella examine their shield generators with the intensity of a predator stalking prey, but I think we're about to find out. From somewhere in the ship's depths came the sound of human laughter, followed by the unmistakable whine of power tools. The Harmony's end was about to experience humanity's unique approach to problem solving. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing spectacularly. 3 hours later, Vex was beginning to understand why the rest of the galaxy spoke of humans in whispers. What had started as simple repairs had somehow evolved into what Murphy cheerfully called minor improvements, and what Vex was beginning to recognize as a complete military refit. Murphy, Vex said, finding the human engineer elbow deep in what used to be their navigation console, what exactly are you doing? Oh, just fixing your nav system, Murphy replied without looking up. It was only capable of basic stellar cartography, so we've upgraded it to include tactical analysis, threat assessment, and predictive combat modeling. You know, standard stuff. Standard for what? For not dying horribly in space, Murphy said, as if this were obvious. Your old system couldn't even detect cloaked ships. What were you planning to do if someone snuck up on you? Ask them politely to leave. Vex opened his mouth to point out that the coalition was a peaceful organization, then remembered the pirate attack and decided Murphy might have a point. and the sparks coming from the weapons bay. Oh, that's just Stella having fun. She's upgrading your pulse cannons. We asked you not to touch our weapons. Technically you asked us not to make them fancy, we're just making them functional. There's a difference. Vex hurried to the weapons bay, where he found Stella surrounded by components that definitely hadn't been there before. The modest pulse cannons that had barely been able to dent the pirate ships were now connected to power couplings that looked like they belonged on a battleship. Stella, Vex said carefully. What have you done to our weapons? Fixed them, she replied, not looking up from her work. Your power output was pathetic, your targeting system was a joke, and your cooling system was non-existent. These beauties can now punch through Class 5 armor plating and track multiple targets simultaneously. We don't need to punch through Class 5 armor plating. You will when word gets out that you've got human-modified weapons, Stella said cheerfully. Trust me, every pirate in the sector is going to want to test them. This was not reassuring. Vex made his way to the engine room, where he found more humans than he remembered boarding his ship. They seemed to multiply when he wasn't looking. Murphy, he called out, how many people did you bring? Just the 3 of us, Murphy replied. Though Vex counted at least 6 humans working on various systems. The others are remote specialists. We've got a quantum physicist helping with your power core, a materials engineer working on your hull plating, and a guy who's really good with explosives consulting on your missile systems. We don't have missile systems. You do now. Vex felt a headache coming on, which was impressive considering his species didn't typically get headaches. Murphy, we asked for simple repairs, and we're giving you simple repairs, Murphy said. It's just that once you start fixing one thing, you realize how terrible everything else is. It's like pulling a thread on a sweater, except the sweater is held together by good intentions and the thread is basic engineering competence. The hull is reading as 30% stronger than when you arrived, Chief Engineer Blord reported, appearing at Vex's elbow. Also, our power output has increased by 400%. That's impossible, Vex said. Humans don't believe in impossible. Murphy called out. They believe in hold my beer and watch this. What's beer? Vex asked. You don't want to know, Blord whispered. I made the mistake of asking. It's apparently a beverage that makes humans even more reckless than usual. The ship shuddered, but not in the alarming way it had been shuddering before. This felt more like a purr of satisfaction, as if the Harmony's end was finally getting the attention it deserved. Sensors are showing massive improvements across all systems, Krill reported from the bridge. Our detection range has tripled, and we're picking up subspace signatures I've never seen before. That's probably the early warning system, Murphy said, emerging from the navigation console with what appeared to be a completely new piece of equipment. It'll detect hostile intent from 3 light-years away, very handy for avoiding unpleasant surprises. How does it detect hostile intent? Vex asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Trade secret, Murphy winked. Let's just say it involves a lot of math and a little bit of what humans call aggressive paranoia. The coffee machine in the corner started making encouraging noises, which was remarkable considering it had been completely destroyed a few hours ago. Tomas emerged from beneath it, covered in grease but smiling. She's not just fixed, he announced proudly. She's been upgraded. This beauty can now make 17 different types of coffee, analyze crew biometrics to determine optimal caffeine levels, and serve as a backup communication system in case of emergencies. A communication system? Vex asked. Coffee is the universal language, Tomas said solemnly. Trust me, when you're in trouble, you want to be able to call for help and coffee simultaneously. Vex looked around his ship, which was rapidly becoming unrecognizable. The walls seemed sturdier, the lighting was brighter, and there was a subtle hum of power that suggested his vessel was now capable of things that would have been impossible that morning. Murphy, he said slowly, what exactly have you turned my ship into? Murphy paused in his work and looked around with the pride of an artist admiring a masterpiece. We've turned it into a ship that won't get you killed, he said simply. Everything else is just details. These details include weapons that can level cities and a navigation system that can predict the future, Vex pointed out. Like I said, details, Murphy grinned. Don't worry, Commander. We're almost done. Just need to finish the defensive systems, upgrade your life support, and install the new coffee distribution network. Coffee distribution network. Every station on the ship will have coffee access, Tomas explained. It's a productivity multiplier. You'll thank us later. As if to prove his point, the ship's speakers crackled to life with the gentle sound of percolating coffee. Vex's crew looked up with expressions of wonder and hope, as if they were hearing the voice of their gods. The Harmony's end was no longer the same ship that had limped into this system. It was something new, something powerful, and something that would probably terrify the rest of the galaxy. But at least it would have really good coffee. The first sign that something had fundamentally changed aboard the Harmony's end wasn't the humming of upgraded weapons or the gentle pulse of enhanced shields. It was the smell. Rich, complex and utterly alien to every non-human nose on the ship, the aroma of genuine Earth coffee began wafting through the ventilation system at exactly 0800 hours. Ship time. Vex was reviewing damage reports when the scent hit him, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. "What is that?" Navigation Officer Krill asked, his voice carrying a note of wonder that Vex had never heard before. "That," announced Tomas Rivera, appearing in the doorway of the bridge with what could only be described as a religious artifact, "is coffee. The real stuff." The cup in Tomas's hand steamed gently, releasing more of that incredible aroma into the bridge's recycled air. Every crew member present turned to stare at it with the focused attention usually reserved for incoming missiles or attractive members of their own species. "It smells like productivity," whispered Communications Officer Trill. "It smells like the answer to questions I didn't know I had," added Chief Engineer Blorg. Tomas nodded approvingly. "Coffee is many things to many species, but to humans it's the difference between civilization and chaos. Your previous coffee substitute was an insult to beverages everywhere. This," he held up the cup, "is the difference between surviving and thriving. Can we try it?" Vex asked, surprised by the eagerness in his own voice. "I was hoping you'd ask," Tomas grinned. "I've prepared individual samples, calibrated for each of your species' metabolisms. Don't worry, I've removed any compounds that might cause adverse reactions, hallucinations, or spontaneous combustion." "Spontaneous combustion?" Vex asked. "That only happened once, and technically it was the humans' fault for adding whiskey to the coffee," Tomas said dismissively. "Here, try this." He handed Vex a smaller cup filled with a dark liquid that seemed to absorb light. Vex took a cautious sip and immediately understood why humans had conquered half the galaxy despite their apparent death wish. The liquid was complex, bitter, energizing, and somehow exactly what he hadn't known he needed. "This is incredible," he said, taking another sip. "How much of this substance do you have?" "I brought enough raw materials to keep a crew of 50 caffeinated for approximately 6 months, Tomas replied. "I also installed a processing unit that can synthesize more from basic organic compounds. You'll never run out." Within an hour, word had spread throughout the ship. The humans had brought coffee, real coffee, and it was available to anyone who wanted it. The queue outside the mess hall stretched halfway around the ship, with crew members who had never spoken to each other bonding over their shared anticipation of caffeine. "Sir," reported Chief Engineer Blorg, appearing on the bridge with a cup of his own, "productivity is up 300% across all departments. Engineering has completed repairs that were scheduled for next week, the navigation department has plotted 17 different routes home, and the weapons team has somehow improved their targeting accuracy by 40%. "That's impossible," Vex said, though he was beginning to learn that impossible was a relative concept where humans were involved. "The coffee contains natural stimulants that enhance focus and cognitive function," Tomas explained. "Different species react differently, but the general effect is increased alertness, improved problem solving, and what humans call the ability to get stuff done." "Is it addictive?" Vex asked, though he was already reaching for his second cup. "Psychologically, yes. Physically, no. Well, mostly no. There might be some mild withdrawal symptoms if you stop suddenly, but nothing worse than irritability, fatigue, and an overwhelming desire to hide under a blanket until the universe makes sense again." "That sounds like addiction to me," Vex muttered. "Humans prefer to call it chemical dependency with benefits." Tomas shrugged. "Look, the way I see it, you've got two choices. You can drink coffee and be alert, productive, and capable of handling whatever the universe throws at you. Or you can not drink coffee and be tired, sluggish, and defenseless against caffeinated opponents." "Caffeinated opponents. Trust me, you don't want to fight someone who's had their morning coffee when you haven't had yours. It's like bringing a pillow to a plasma rifle fight." As if to prove his point, the ship's intercom crackled to life with Murphy's voice. "Attention crew, we've just finished installing the automated coffee distribution system. Every workstation now has access to fresh coffee, customized for your species and work requirements. The system is tied into your productivity metrics, so the harder you work, the better your coffee gets. Also, we've added a feature that automatically dispenses coffee during red alert situations, because nobody should have to face mortal danger without proper caffeine levels." The cheer that went up from the crew was audible throughout the ship. Vex realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in Coalition history, a crew that was actually excited about their duties. "Sir," Krill reported, "we're receiving requests from 17 different Coalition vessels asking about our performance enhancement protocols. Apparently, Our efficiency ratings have caught the attention of command. What did you tell them? I told them we couldn't discuss classified information, Krill replied. It seemed safer than trying to explain that we're high on human beverages. By the end of the day, the Harmony's End had become a different ship entirely. The crew moved with purpose, spoke with enthusiasm, and tackled problems with an energy that bordered on manic. The ship's systems hummed with efficiency, and for the first time since the pirate attack, Vex felt genuinely optimistic about their chances. Tomas, he said, finding the human engineer in what had once been a storage closet and was now somehow a fully equipped coffee laboratory. I need to ask you something. Shoot, Tomas replied, not looking up from his equipment. Is this how humans always feel? Tomas paused in his work and considered the question. You mean alert, focused and ready to take on the universe? Yes, pretty much. Yeah. Well, after the first cup anyway. Before that we're basically non-functional bipedal mammals with anger management issues. And this is why you've been so successful as a species. Coffee is definitely a factor. Tomas nodded. That, and our fundamental inability to leave well enough alone. Speaking of which, Jake wanted me to ask if you'd mind if we upgraded your replicators. Apparently, your food synthesis technology is criminally inefficient. Vex looked around the coffee lab, with its gleaming equipment and the gentle hum of productivity, and realized that resistance was futile. The humans had already transformed his ship into something unrecognizable. What was a little more transformation? Tell Murphy he can upgrade whatever he wants, Vex said, taking another sip of his coffee. At this point, I'm curious to see what we become. That's the spirit, Tomas grinned. Trust me, Commander, you haven't seen anything yet. In the background, the ship's coffee distribution system hummed contentedly, dispensing liquid motivation to a crew that was rapidly learning why humans approached the universe with such confident insanity. They had discovered the secret: everything was possible with enough coffee and the right attitude. The universe, as Vex had learned during his years of service, had a twisted sense of humor. Just when things seemed to be going well, when his crew was caffeinated and productive, when his ship was purring like a well-tuned engine, the proximity alarms began screaming. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, Krill announced, his voice tight with tension but notably steadier than it would have been a week ago. 67 vessels, all showing pirate registry signatures. 67? Vex repeated, choking on his coffee. We barely survived 3 of them last time. Sir, added Trill from communications, we're receiving a transmission. It's Captain Griselda Bloodfang of the Crimson Death Fleet. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a Vaxarian pirate whose cybernetic implants and facial tattoos suggested she took her work very seriously. Captain Bloodfang smiled, revealing teeth that had been replaced with sharpened metal, and spoke in the universal language of impending violence. Coalition vessel Harmony's End, she snarled. You destroyed 3 of my ships and humiliated my crew. I've brought the entire Crimson Death Fleet to return the favor. Prepare to be boarded, looted, and converted into scrap metal. Ma'am, Vex replied, trying to project more confidence than he felt. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We barely scratched your ships last time. Barely scratched. Bloodfang laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You vaporized the Skull Crusher with one shot, turned the Blood Drinker into a cloud of superheated plasma, and sent the Painbringer limping home with its engines destroyed. My reputation in the pirate community has never recovered. Vex looked around the bridge in confusion. We did that. Apparently so, sir, Blorg reported from his station. According to the ship's logs, our weapons systems automatically engaged when the pirates attacked. They were firing at optimal efficiency and precision. Optimal efficiency? Vex asked. The humans recalibrated our targeting computers, Stella Martinez announced, appearing on the bridge with a cup of coffee and a disturbingly enthusiastic expression. They now compensate for enemy evasive maneuvers, adjust for gravitational effects, and calculate optimal impact points for maximum structural damage. Your old system was like trying to perform surgery with a butter knife. Captain, Bloodfang continued on the screen. I'm offering you one chance to surrender. Hand over your ship, your crew, and whatever technology you use to upgrade your weapons, and I'll make your deaths quick and relatively painless. Counter-offer, Jake Murphy said, stepping onto the bridge while consulting a tablet. You could surrender to us instead. Would save everyone a lot of time and ammunition. Who are you? Bloodfang demanded. Jake Murphy, Terran Emergency Response Team. We're here doing some light maintenance on the Harmony's End. Nothing fancy, just bringing their systems up to basic operational standards. Basic operational standards. Bloodfang's eyes narrowed. What kind of basic operational standards can vaporize an entire pirate squadron? The kind that don't get you killed in space, Murphy replied cheerfully. Look, I appreciate the whole intimidation thing you've got going on, but we're kind of in the middle of something here. Could you maybe come back later? Say never? The pirate captain's expression shifted from confidence to uncertainty. Are you saying you're not afraid of the Crimson Death Fleet? Ma'am, with respect, we're humans. We're not afraid of anything that can't kill us, and we're only mildly concerned about things that can. Your fleet is impressive, but it's not exactly what we'd call a threat. 67 ships isn't a threat. Bloodfang sputtered. Not to a human-modified vessel with a properly caffeinated crew, Murphy said, taking a sip of his coffee. Trust me, you really don't want to do this. Sir, Krill whispered to Vex. The human might be right. Our defensive systems are showing capabilities I didn't know we had. What kind of capabilities? Vex asked. Well, for starters, our shields can now deflect planet-killer weapons, our hull plating is rated for direct impacts from stellar flares, and our point defense systems can target individual rivets on enemy ships from 3 light seconds away. That's impossible, Vex said, though he was beginning to realize that impossible was rapidly becoming his least favorite word. Impossible is just another word for hasn't been properly engineered yet. Murphy said. Stella, what's our weapons status? All systems green, Stella reported with the enthusiasm of someone about to unwrap a present. The new targeting system has identified weak points on all 67 enemy vessels, calculated optimal firing solutions, and is ready to engage on your command. Estimated time to disable the entire fleet, approximately 4 minutes. Bloodfang demanded. That's impossible. There's that word again. Murphy sighed. Commander Vex, it's your ship. What would you like to do? Vex looked around his bridge. His crew was alert, focused, and running on premium coffee. His ship was humming with power he'd never dreamed of, and apparently, they could single-handedly defeat an entire pirate fleet in less time than it took to brew a proper cup of coffee. Captain Bloodfang, he said, straightening his uniform, I'm going to give you the same chance you gave me. Surrender now, and I'll make this quick and relatively painless. You're bluffing, Bloodfang snarled. Tomas, Vex called out. Could you brew up some combat-grade coffee? I think we're going to need it. Already on it, Tomas replied from somewhere in the ship. I've got high-stimulant battle blend dispensing to all stations. Your crew is about to discover what humans call aggressive problem-solving. The bridge coffee dispensers activated with a gentle chime, filling the air with the aroma of fresh coffee and impending violence. Vex's crew perked up noticeably, their movements becoming more precise, their expressions more focused. Sir, Krill reported, the pirate fleet is moving into attack formation. How long until they're in weapons range? Vex asked. They're already in weapons range, Stella replied. Our weapons range is approximately 6 times longer than theirs. Then let's show them what human engineering can do, Vex said, taking a sip of his coffee and feeling the caffeine hit his system like liquid confidence. All weapons, fire at will. What happened next would go down in galactic history as the Coffee Nebula incident, though historians would spend decades arguing about whether that name referred to the location of the battle or the state of the coalition crew. The Harmony's End opened fire with weapons that had been designed by humans who believed that if something was worth shooting, it was worth shooting thoroughly. The pirate fleet, which had been expecting a desperate last stand, instead found themselves facing the combined might of human engineering and alien determination, all powered by premium coffee. Direct hit on the Skull Crusher Mark II, Krill reported. Their weapons are offline. The Blood Drinker's revenge is retreating, added Trill. They're transmitting a surrender signal. Captain Bloodfang's flagship is requesting parley, Stella announced. Apparently they're reconsidering their life choices. On the view screen, Bloodfang stared at the Harmony's End with the expression of someone who had just discovered that their carefully laid plans had been shredded by forces beyond their comprehension. What are you? She whispered. We're a coalition vessel that asked for repairs, Vex replied, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. We got upgrades instead, and really good coffee. Coffee? Bloodfang asked. You should try it sometime, Vex said. It's amazing what you can accomplish with proper motivation and adequate caffeine. The pirate captain looked around at what remained of her fleet, most of which was now either disabled or in full retreat, and made a decision that would save her life and her remaining ships. Crimson Death Fleet, she announced over the communications channel. Tactical withdrawal. I repeat, tactical withdrawal. Mark this system as off limits. The coalition has new friends, and they're completely insane. As the pirate fleet limped away into hyperspace, Vex sat back in his command chair and took another sip of his coffee. His ship was intact, his crew was victorious, and he was beginning to understand why humans had such a reputation for turning the impossible into the inevitable. "Well," Murphy said, appearing at his elbow, "that was fun. Nothing like a good space battle to test out new systems. Everything performed perfectly, though I think we might have overdone it a bit with the weapons upgrades." "Overdone it?" Vex asked. "Your main guns are now capable of cracking moons," Murphy admitted. "But on the bright side, you'll probably never have to worry about pirates again. Word gets around in the criminal community." "What word?" "That the Coalition has a ship that can turn an entire pirate fleet into scrap metal in 4 minutes while running on coffee." Murphy grinned. "Trust me, that's the kind of reputation that makes people very polite." Vex nodded slowly, realizing that his quiet life as a Coalition commander was over. The Harmony's End was no longer just a ship, it was a statement, a warning, and quite possibly the most dangerous vessel in the galaxy, and it had the best coffee in 3 sectors. 2 weeks later, Vex stood in what had once been the ship's modest briefing room and was now something that could only be described as a strategic operations center. The humans had installed holographic displays, quantum communication arrays, and what Tomas proudly called the most advanced coffee service station in known space. "Sir," Communications Officer Trill announced, "we're receiving our 14th request for assistance today. The Centauri Defense Force wants to know if we can help with their minor pest control issue involving a rogue asteroid swarm. And the Vegan Trade Consortium is offering us exclusive mining rights to 3 systems if we'll just take a look at their cargo ship designs," added Navigation Officer Krill. "They're specifically requesting that we bring our human consultants." Vex rubbed his temples with all 4 hands, a gesture that had become increasingly frequent since the Coffee Nebula incident. Word had spread throughout the galaxy with the speed that only truly alarming news could achieve. The Coalition had a ship that could single-handedly defeat entire fleets, and apparently, they were willing to share their human-enhanced technology. "What did you tell them?" Vex asked. "I told them we'd get back to them," Trill replied. "We're currently backlogged with requests from 47 different systems, 12 trade federations, and 3 species we've never heard of before. Don't forget the marriage proposal," Krill added. "Marriage proposal. The Empress of the Altarian Star Empire wants to marry you," Krill explained. "She says any commander who can turn pirates into cosmic dust with caffeine-enhanced precision would make an excellent husband." "I'm flattered, but I think I'll pass," Vex said, though he had to admit the offer was tempting. "What's our current status?" "All systems operating at peak efficiency," Chief Engineer Blorg reported, appearing with a cup of coffee that had become his permanent accessory. "The humans finished their final upgrades yesterday. We now have backup systems for our backup systems, and our backup systems have backup systems." "That seems excessive," Vex observed. "That's what I thought," Blorg replied. Until Murphy explained that redundancy is the difference between mission accomplished and floating debris with regrets. "I've become something of a convert to human engineering philosophy. Which is, if it's not over-engineered, it's not engineered properly," Blorg said solemnly. "Also, everything is better with coffee." Jake Murphy chose that moment to enter the briefing room, carrying a tablet, and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who had just solved a problem that shouldn't have existed in the first place. "Commander," he announced, "we've got good news and interesting news. The good news is that we've completed all requested repairs and upgrades. The Harmony's End is now operating at approximately 1200% of her original specifications. And the interesting news, we've received a priority message from Earth. Apparently, our little repair job has caught the attention of the Terran Engineering Corps, and they're impressed enough to offer you a formal alliance." "An alliance? Think of it as a mutual assistance pact," Murphy explained. "You help us with our engineering projects, and we help you with yours. Plus you get access to our coffee supply chain, which is honestly the more valuable part of the deal." Vex considered this. An alliance with Earth would mean access to human technology, human expertise, and human coffee. It would also mean getting involved in whatever insane projects humans considered routine maintenance. "What kind of engineering projects?" he asked cautiously. "Oh, the usual stuff," Murphy replied. "Fixing broken space stations, upgrading planetary defense systems, occasionally moving stars around for better feng shui. Nothing too dramatic. Moving stars around. Only when absolutely necessary," Murphy assured him. "And we always ask permission first, usually." "Sir," Tomas interrupted, emerging from the coffee station with a fresh pot. "I should mention that the Alliance package includes access to our premium coffee blends. I'm talking about the really good stuff, the kind that makes you question whether you've been truly alive before this moment." "We already have good coffee," Bevs pointed out. "You have very good coffee," Tomas corrected. "I'm talking about transcendent coffee. Coffee that makes you understand the fundamental nature of the universe. Coffee that makes you want to conquer galaxies just to share it with everyone. That sounds dangerous, Vex said. Only if you're not properly caffeinated, Tomas replied. Trust me, the universe is much more manageable when you're running on premium stimulants. Sir Stella Martinez added, joining the conversation. The Alliance also includes access to our advanced weapons development programs. I'm talking about the kind of technology that makes your current armaments look like slingshots. Our current armaments can crack moons, Vex reminded her. Your current armaments can crack small moons, Stella corrected. We're talking about moon-cracking technology that also makes good coffee while it's cracking moons. It's all about efficiency. Vex looked around the room at his crew, who were all nodding enthusiastically while clutching their coffee cups like lifelines. He realized that somewhere in the process of asking for simple repairs, he had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. His ship was now a technological marvel. His crew was addicted to human beverages, and half the galaxy was either trying to hire him or marry him. Commander, Murphy said, I know this is a lot to process, but I want you to know that this whole thing started as a simple repair job. We just can't help ourselves when it comes to improving things. I've noticed, Vex replied dryly. The thing is, Murphy continued, you've got a good ship and a good crew. With the right support, you could be doing more than just patrolling trade routes. You could be making a real difference in the galaxy. What kind of difference? The kind where pirates think twice before attacking anyone, where broken ships get fixed properly, and where everyone has access to really good coffee, Murphy said. It's not much, but it's a start. Vex considered this. When he'd started this journey, he'd been a minor coalition commander with a broken ship and a demoralized crew. Now he was apparently the captain of a vessel that could defeat entire fleets while serving premium beverages to his crew. All right, he said finally. I accept Earth's Alliance offer, but I have one condition. Name it, Murphy said. I want to know exactly what you consider routine maintenance before I agree to any more projects. Deal, Murphy grinned. Though I should probably mention that we're working on a project to upgrade the coalition's entire fleet. You know, just basic improvements to bring everyone up to minimum operational standards. Minimum operational standards, the kind that don't get you killed, embarrassed or decaffeinated, Murphy replied. We're calling it Project Percolate. It's going to be great. Vex looked out the view screen at the stars beyond, knowing that his quiet life was officially over. The Harmony's end was no longer just a ship, it was the beginning of something larger, something that would probably terrify and caffeinate the galaxy in equal measure. Sir Trill announced, we're receiving another message from Earth. They're asking if we'd be interested in participating in their next project. What kind of project? Vex asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. They want to build a coffee shop that can also function as a mobile space station, Trill replied. They're calling it Strategic Hospitality Deployment. Of course they are, Vex sighed, taking another sip of his coffee and realizing that he was probably going to need the caffeine for whatever came next. Tell them we'll consider it. Sir Murphy said, I should probably mention that the coffee shop comes with complimentary defensive systems. You know, just in case. Just in case of what? The usual, Murphy replied. Pirates, hostile aliens, customers who don't appreciate good coffee, the essentials. As the Harmony's end continued on its course through space, its crew caffeinated, and its systems humming with human-enhanced efficiency, Vex reflected on the simple truth he'd learned. There was no such thing as a simple repair job when humans were involved. There were only opportunities for improvement, and humans saw opportunities everywhere. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you combined coalition idealism with human engineering and premium coffee. It was going to be an interesting century. Murphy, Vex said, when you said this was your small job, what exactly do you consider a big job? Murphy paused in his coffee consumption and gave Vex a look that suggested he'd asked exactly the right question. Well, Murphy said thoughtfully, we've been talking about upgrading the galaxy's approach to faster-than-light travel. Current methods are terribly inefficient. We're thinking about something that combines hyperspace navigation with espresso delivery systems. Why? Vex asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Because, Murphy replied, there's no point in traveling faster than light if you can't get good coffee when you arrive. And with that, Vex understood that his adventure was just beginning. The humans had fixed his ship, upgraded his crew, and caffeinated his entire existence. Now they were planning to do the same thing to the galaxy. He took another sip of his coffee and smiled. It was going to be a hell of a ride.